this outfit is reading Pastel Hobbit. It's like Wes Anderson does Lord of the Rings, and I love it. I want to show you my little pin collection that's on here. Isn't that perfect? Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Melissa, but if you are one of my super chill subscribers and you've been following along, then you already know that you can call me Missy. So for today's video, we are going to be working on some art, and something that I've been wanting to do for a while is make some art of my lizard. We bought this leopard gecko a year and a half ago. Of course, I have fallen completely in love with her. She is so cute and sweet. She's a little sassy, but I didn't want to just do some pictures of her. I wanted to do some historically inspired pictures, and while I was sick a couple weeks ago, I binged the first half of Bridgerton season 4 because the second half hadn't come out yet. My brain's not numbering. It doesn't like numbers. It's not going to. I think it's season 3. So going into this week, I still have Bridgerton on the brain. So for today's video and this week's project, I am going to be working on Bridgerton-esque, Regency-inspired lizard pictures. I'm going to get as much art done as I can. This week has been a little bit busy, and hopefully I can get some really cute pictures together. It has been a minute since I've done some sketching, so we're just going to see where things take us. So let's get to work. On this fine summer day, we rode our bikes to the park, and I recorded this footage on the tablet that I had with me. The case doubles as a stand, but I also obviously wanted footage of me actually drawing, so I ended up propping it up on some water bottles, which wasn't necessarily the best solution, but I had to work with what I had. This is the best that I could get. These preliminary sketches had a couple of purposes. First of all was to remind myself that I can still draw because it's been a while, as I said in the intro. And when it's been a while, I begin to think that maybe I can't draw anymore. I suppose you could say it serves as a little bit of a warm-up of sorts. The second purpose of this little sketch exercise was to help familiarize myself with the anatomy of a lizard, because I'm more familiar with the anatomy of a human, and as you can imagine, lizards are quite different from humans anatomically. For my reference photos, I just looked up pictures of stranger geckos online because I don't actually have a lot of photos of our leopard gecko. Once I began to feel more comfortable with lizard anatomy, I went full Titanic and drew her like one of my French girls. And while yes, this was for fun, it was also to see if I could play with the anatomy of the lizard to pose the body in a way that felt more human. When I was adequately amused and pleased with the result, I moved on to drawing a lizard in a Regency dress. I also added cleavage because it feels like a key accessory to have ample décolletage in many of the Regency era fashions. And then I did one more drawing specifically referencing a Regency fashion plate to help me start to get a grasp of the style of drawing that is Regency fashion plates. right, it's a new day. I have assured myself that I can still draw, so I'm going to get into some art, some final art. I'm going to start with some watercolor. I have this watercolor pad. This is the brand, but I don't like planning ahead enough to like stretch my watercolor paper, so these blocks, these watercolor blocks, are my best friend if I want to do watercolor. I also have some old coffee that I kind of wanted to color the page with, and some watercolor around here somewhere. So we're gonna get started. Let's get working. So I did begin by using that several days old coffee to tint the page. As it is summer, I did utilize the sun and the heat to dry everything more quickly than would otherwise have been possible. And that made everything go much more quickly. When I draw, I have a tendency to want to run off of the page, so I went ahead and drew some boundaries for myself so that I'd have a pleasant border around the drawing area. You may notice that the scenery has once again changed. We started at the park, then I was at my desk in my studio, and now I'm at my battered old dining table so that I can work alongside my children and, of course, their toys. One thing I noticed while I was sketching was that I struggled with the proportions of the head to the rest of the body just because lizards really don't have the same anatomy as humans. So while I'm sketching this out, I'm going to tell you a little bit about our lizard. We decided to get a leopard gecko after we had purchased a book all about the care of leopard geckos, and we read through it thoroughly, and we realized that they would be fairly easy as far as reptiles go to take care of. And so we were really excited to obtain this gecko. We thought that we had everything we needed for her based on the care instructions in the book. And so we were going about our merry way. Things were going great until suddenly she stopped eating and we couldn't get her to eat again. So of course we took her to the vet, and the vet said, well, do you have a lamp for UVB light? And I was like, no, the book said that we didn't need a lamp because they're nocturnal. And she was like, well, those books tend to be behind the curve. They do need that light in order to produce the vitamin D that they need to absorb sufficient calcium. So it's very possible and even probable that your gecko is just malnourished. And we're like, okay, so we got her all the things we needed. We have begun to force feed her at this point just so that she doesn't die in the process of hopefully restoring her nutrients. That didn't seem to solve the problem, and so we took her back and we got her on an antibiotic, and we thought possibly it was some sort of parasite. And at some point she vomited up some food, and that's when the vet realized that it's possible that she's having some reproductive distress. So essentially in female leopard geckos, their bodies will produce eggs when they are ready to mate. And if those eggs are fertilized, they will lay them, and then eventually they will hopefully hatch. But if they're not fertilized, what a healthy, well-nourished female lizard will do is lay her eggs anyway, and either they would need to be collected and disposed of. My son was hoping to be able to try cooking and eating them, or a gecko may choose to eat their own eggs in some cases. Our gecko is not well nourished, and so she is trying to produce these eggs and is unable to fully form them. Therefore, her body may reabsorb them, or they might just get stuck and need to be removed surgically. Because if they just sit in her body for too long, they will go bad, possibly become infected, and that would be potentially lethal. She is still on an antibiotic to help protect her against something like that happening, but we're hoping that she will reabsorb the eggs. We're keeping an eye on her. She has regular visits that are scheduled for her vet to look at her. But in the meantime, she's a little high maintenance. She doesn't mind the liquid diet that we've been force feeding her, but she absolutely hates the antibiotic and the supplement. I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of cute the way she will wipe her face on the glass, on the substrate, and in her water after we give it to her. But you can send her well wishes in the comments if you'd like. Her name is Draco Ring. So anyways, since she hasn't been eating, she also hasn't been eating her shed skin, which means that I've gotten to see a little bit more of her shedding process. If you don't have a reptile or haven't been close to a reptile, then basically what happens is that their skin starts to become more dull and filmy, and then it will kind of start to become like a baggy skin suit over their regular skin, and then it will come off in big chunks. At one point while she was shedding, it looked like she was wearing really loose, translucent gloves, kind of like they wore in the Regency era. This was both adorable and very fascinating to me. So in these designs, I wanted to play a little bit with that idea of her shed skin being part of her Regency wardrobe. In that first design, which I was not happy with how it turned out because I was playing with that pen and using it before the watercolor, and that did not work out well. Anyways, in that first drawing, I had her bonnet kind of being her shed skin that's been rolled back at the top. And in this one, her body shed is kind of like the shawl that's blowing in the breeze. For this drawing, I wanted to more directly reference Bridgerton specifically, and even more specifically, this image of Penelope. But I thought the yellow dress was even more likely to clash with my lizard's yellow complexion than her human counterpart in that same color. So I decided to give her a blue dress a la our heroine's quote-unquote glow up. I still have yet to watch the second half of season 3, although from what I hear on the interwebs, it was not that great. But I still need to see it, okay? I need to experience it for myself. For my fourth and final drawing, I chose to reference BBC's 1995 masterpiece version of Pride and Prejudice, mostly because I couldn't stop thinking of Elizabeth Bennet. I had seriously considered the beloved 2005 adaptation for this, but I just didn't feel like her dresses looked Regency enough to make a convincing fashion plate. Additionally, and I'm not trying to be controversial here, but I just prefer the 1995 version. Although, Mr. Collins remarking on boiled potatoes in 2005 was Yukon Gold. But apart from admittedly being a little bit of a snob, my favorite version was also my first exposure to the story. And in high school, after binging it one time, I was struck with sudden inspiration and proceeded to feverishly construct a monstrous empire-waisted tunic, because at that time, leggings were just starting to be the thing, but you had to wear it with some kind of a tunic at that time because it was like obscene to wear the leggings just by themselves without covering up your booty. However, this is notable because it was one of the first times that I sewed something completely without a pattern. I additionally feel that it may be worth noting that while leggings and tunics were popular at the time, empire waists were not, but I was ridiculously proud of what I made, and I wore it several times, even though I was aware that it was ill-fitting and not at all flattering. All of that aside, this little artwork is just about done, and we will be heading into the reveal. Thank you ever so much for staying until tea time. Do let me know if you have elected to indulge yourself in a beverage during this video. What is your beverage of choice? I have for myself some oolong. They say it is harvested by trained monkeys. Small talk aside, let us discuss the artwork that was the subject of today's video. I'm very glad that I did not skip the step of sketching first. I do sometimes do that, but I feel that these photos and practicing these odd face shapes I'm used to drawing humans was extremely helpful as I was creating the fashion illustrations. On to the main event, the fashion illustrations that I created. This was a failure. As with all failure, it did come with its learning opportunities. As you can see, I discovered that my ink was water soluble even after drying. For example, India ink, though I am not sure what it is made out of, tends not to do this. It tends to be fast after drying, so yeah. I did very much like the concept behind this drawing, but it did not work out in the end, alas. Next, I did this little drawing, which I really enjoyed as a parent shaking one's fist to the sky. Again, I enjoy the concept of this one. However, I am not entirely sure that it reads very well, that this shawl that is blowing in the breeze is meant to be a shed skin shawl. However, I do enjoy the attitude and I feel that it was overall a success. Next is Scanelope Tailington. I don't know that she is recognizable as a lizard version of a beloved character, but she does look quite adorable and quite cozy upon her little couch. Overall, I enjoy this little illustration. However, I do feel that it stands out in conjunction with this and this illustration, as it appears less like the fashion illustrations and more like an illustration that you might come across inside a book, which I think is lovely. However, it doesn't appear to quite fit in with the rest of the series of drawings. And of course, we finally have Elizabeth Bennet. Again, I feel like I had learned a lot about the mediums, and I really enjoy the subtle differences in color in order to create some texture and some fine detail, which helps to draw your eye into and around the picture. Again, I'm not sure how well it reads as a character, but She is very adorable. Overall, I very much enjoyed creating this little series of Regency fashion illustration style artworks. They may not have been done with enough skill to tempt a husband, however, I do have other temptations, which my husband can attest to. I suppose that is all which I desired to speak on today. Thank you ever so much for indulging me in this video. If you found any part of this video amusing, please go ahead and hit that thumbs up button down below. And if you should like to come along in the future, I do art, I do sewing, I do home improvement. My projects are various and sundry, but if you would like to come along, then go ahead and subscribe, and then I shall see you next tea time. Goodbye!